Welcome to the Next Level Life podcast with Christine Corcoran. This podcast is made for the powerhouse businesswomen who are ready to ignite their fullest potential. This is where we will dive deep into the mindset breakthroughs and sprinkle in some kick up the butt motivation so you can scale your business with confidence and clarity. Whether you're craving more income, impact, or inspiration, this podcast will be your ultimate resource for all things next level. Listen in as we have authentic conversations with game-changing female entrepreneurs as we reveal the secrets on what it takes to rise and thrive. So go ahead, ignite your inner fire, and let's get you taking massive aligned action. Are you ready to elevate? Let's go. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for hitting download. I really appreciate you being here. I wanted to do an episode on the lessons of 2024, and I want to make sure it's really valuable for you. So what I've done is actually broken down my year, have written down everything that I implemented this year, because I really want to allow you to see behind the scenes of the way that I run my business. And I also want to just pull out any big lessons that I've had throughout the year, because I feel like this year has been incredible. There's definitely been some highs, there's definitely been some lows, and I am naturally such a positive person. Actually, I shouldn't say naturally. I've wired my brain to be a very positive person. So I really do look to the positives, and I don't look at anything at being a failure. I don't look at anything being a bad thing, but I look at the lessons. So there's definitely been some massive lessons this year, especially with the scaling of my business and where I've spent my time. And I think it's so important and so valuable to do the full reflection for your business, because there has definitely been some massive changes within mine, and that's definitely impacted income levels. It's definitely impacted, roller coaster income. There's definitely impacted space within my business. There's been so many lessons that I can't even, but I want to share with you what's going to be valuable for you. But if there's anything else that comes through in this podcast episode that you would love to know more about, please send me a DM and let me know, because otherwise I don't know what you really want me to create within the podcast. And so I'm just thinking, okay, well, these are the types of questions that I'm getting within my mastermind. These are the types of questions I'm getting with conversations that I am having. So I want to make sure that, it's valuable for you. All right, so basically how I reflect on my year, I've gone through my calendar and I've written down everything that I implemented within my business this year. And I've written down all my investments, and I've written down all the travel that I've done. I've written down all the guest presentations, conferences I've attended, everything. And I'm going to go through them with you and the benefits from those. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've implemented and the lessons from those, because I feel like that's where you're probably going to get the most value. So hopefully this is, something that really resonates with you. So I reflect on everything from my numbers. So I go through all of my numbers. I do a full review on my business. I get all my numbers from zero. And then I also look at every launch. I look at my retention of clients. I look at the promotions that I put in place. I looked at the offers that I put out. I look at everything. And then I've also gone through my physical calendar that I had on my wall that I took down before I moved, and basically everything that I've done throughout the year. And so I wanted to explore this with you, because I feel like this will benefit you to really look at, okay, so this is what's happening behind the scenes, because you might be able to take something away that goes, oh, I can do that next year. And I'd love for that to happen. All right, so here's some of the things that I implemented in my business this year. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, I decided that I wanted to step back in and do some more in-person stuff, because I had really missed it. So I obviously put out the Thrive Retreat for an in-person event in October, but I did some in-person events in a smaller scale. So I actually did an event in February and in July in Brisbane. And if you were there, hi, thank you so much for coming along. It was so good to see you and get to hug you and all get to meet you. And I really loved those. So in February, I was actually super sick. So I just got back from the States, and I had gotten sick on the plane. And I remember being there and trying to get through the day, but having the best day. It was so much fun. And then I ran a sales workshop in July. And I think the biggest lessons from there is definitely the March event. So I did one in March, but I'm going to do one earlier this year. So I've got one planned for February. And so hopefully when this episode goes out, that should be live in my links on Instagram. If I remember, I'll add it to the links in the show notes. But basically I found that running events in the beginning of the year is really great, because people are so keen. They're so keen to get out and about. They're, been home with the kids, or they've just been not really planning out their year yet. And they want something that has that tangible aspect of planning out the year and really getting inspired and motivated. So I really, really loved my March event. And so I'm definitely going to do that again. I'm going to change the name, but I'm going to do that again. And then I ran a sales workshop in July. Really interesting lessons that I had from the sales workshop was, one, the price point that I put it at, and and the caliber of client that I actually attracted into that room. So I actually went into it thinking that it would be in alignment with my offer for Unstoppable Sales, but what it actually was in alignment with was actually Next Level Mastermind. And so that was a big lesson there, that I actually had majority of people that showed up for that event, they would have been perfect for Next Level, but what I actually did is promoted Unstoppable, which was a mistake. But again, you got to learn these lessons, right? And so way that I'm thinking about it this year is what actually I did in March is actually shared both, which I found really effective. And so it's not normally something that I would do, but because I had two different groups within the room, I found that was really worthwhile. So I'm going to do that again. Make sure that workshop is really detailed, but also really actionable. So again, the lessons that I learned from those two in-person workshops were I actually tried to fit way too much into the day, and I didn't give enough time for connection and masterminding within the room. And then also I overcomplicated things. So I actually was giving way too much information instead of focusing on one or two main things that people could implement and take away and action within the day. And so I'm going to adjust that for next year as well. And so even though like the learning is great, I just, cause people to walk away overwhelmed. And so I don't want that to do that. I want it to be really actionable and really something that they really value. And then I'm also going to be conscious of the price point that I set, because the price point you set will obviously attract the right client. So you've got to be conscious of that as well. So I'm thinking I'm going to do it in between price point, and I'm not sure. I think I'm going to do lunch again. So yeah, sorry, I'm still in the planning stages of this one, FYI. So, but reflecting on the lessons from last year is I loved that I got to include lunch. People loved the connection time, and it really was such a perfect thing to do. And so I love doing that. So I definitely going to do those again. The other thing I implemented as well was conversion events. This is where they were like a 2 or 3 day online event. And these work really well for my business. And I find that actually shows the type of coach that I am, shows the value that I deliver, how invested I get in people's businesses. And I really take the time to teach. And so people really walk away with something really tangible, and people love attending those conversion events. And so, or challenge is another way to put them. So if I'm using the wrong terminology, it's just a challenge, right? So I actually did one in March, one in July, one in September, and one in October. So I did 4 this year. The one in September, I could have done differently. And I have definitely learnt my lesson with regards to, again, the ideal client and who wants what. So obviously with Unstoppable Sales, that's very much for my ideal clients that are working towards creating 10K months and becoming fully booked within their business. And so they prefer a 3-day, really in-depth challenge, and they love them. I have the most amazing people join and get so much out of them, and I love like rewarding them with prizes. And so I'm definitely going to do that again. Whereas my Next Level Mastermind clientele or target audience, they're much busier. So they're much busier. They don't really have much time to join these live things. And so what I did is I ran one in September, and I did one earlier actually. So maybe I've done 5. Didn't see that on my calendar. So I must have done another one earlier on, because March and July and October were for Unstoppable Sales. And then I did Next Level Mastermind in September, but I'm sure I did one earlier. So there must be one other one, making it 2. And so what I found with those is that there was a couple of big lessons with these ones. So one, the timing is really, really key, and they don't want length of time. They want it shorter. They want it more quickly implementing, and they are more really relationship focused, to be honest. So I've learned lots of lessons with regards to my ideal client for Next Level Mastermind, and I'm working on then improving this for next year and adjusting the way that I go about, attracting those clients. And I guess as well, like I did stuff up and actually moved my September launch event or conversion event too late, and it ended up being in school holidays, and that really ruined that launch. Didn't ruin it, but it impacted it. And I found that I didn't get enough signups. And so I need to fully reevaluate, readjust the way that I'm doing that for Next Level Mastermind. And so the other thing is the lead generation piece. So what I found towards the second half of the year, because I was so busy. So the other thing that I did is actually changed Elevate Mastermind to Unstoppable Sales. And in the process of doing that, I renamed it, rebranded it, and also changed a lot of the content. So I went back through and removed a whole bunch of content and improved a whole bunch of content, which took me quite a bit to re-record. And so that was a huge thing, huge activity to do within my business. And it was a risk because it was doing really well as Elevate Mastermind. And then I changed it to be Unstoppable Sales. And the intention with that is creating a real signature product or program that clients already know that they need. So the Elevate Mastermind was too broad, and what was happening is I was having clients asking so many questions about what Elevate was really for and what it supported them with. And so it wasn't really closely related to the problem they recognized that they had. And so I wanted to change it to sales, because what I was finding is that people were coming to it noticing that it had a sales element, and they were like, oh, I really want to learn sales. And so I was like, oh, that's what they're coming to me for. The mindset is great and they want that with it, but it wasn't the draw card. The sales part was the draw card. So that's why I ended up changing to Unstoppable Sales as the name, and also adjusted elements of the program as well for it to be real sales focused. So that happened in June. So I invested in a coach, and we really looked at my marketing strategy, and that was in alignment with that. So that's where that idea came from. And then I started building out the rest of the content in June, and then I launched it then as well in July. So then I did a revenue revival challenge in July. And if you remember back then as well, like June, July was really hard for a lot of business owners. And so what I was hearing back then was everyone was struggling. Like everyone was like having such a dip in their income. They were stressing about where they're going to find the next client from. And I was like, we need to do something here. And so that's where I created the Revenue Revival, which was really focused on what was happening in the market in order for people to feel confident to sell themselves and put themselves out there, increase their prices, or work on all the stuff that Unstoppable Sales works on. And so I found like that was such a massive change within my business. And it was me also getting used to then the shift in messaging. And so I did a whole shift in messaging across my socials. I started really focusing on my personal brand and bringing more of that into it. And then I also like really shifted into full sales. So I did like whole elements around sales conversation. And that was massive, like so massive. Well, let's count how many times I say massive in this podcast. It has been a very big year for me. So then with those conversion events, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned was really making sure that it was not in school holidays, right? Biggest lesson. So now when I map out 2025, I'm not changing the dates. And so what had actually happened because of that rebrand and the change of the program in July, then I launched it, in June, and then I launched it in July, and then I went into August in delivering it, right? So again, shift in program. So I was delivering it. So then when September came around and I had to go into the launch for a Next Level Mastermind, I was actually like so busy with Unstoppable Sales that I was like, oh, far out. I hadn't planned the launch plan effectively. And so I had my in-person mastermind day with them, and that was awesome. Loved that in-person day. I'm going to tell you about what I'm adjusting for next year, which is going to be so good. But basically, once I hit September, I realized I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be going into launch, and I haven't adjusted my messaging on my socials, and I'm not ready. I haven't created the launch, I haven't created the launch content or the conversion event. And I said to my OBM, I have to push it back because I'm just not ready. And it feels so hard to think about if I push through and make this happen. And so I adjusted it 2 weeks, which again, I don't have kids, so I didn't look at the school bloody holidays, and I pushed it too late. And that really impacted my launch. So the way that I've mapped out next year is really looked at all the school holidays, and I'm not going to be adjusting my launches. I've just got to get better at planning. It's one of my biggest lessons. Better at planning, better at utilizing my team, better at utilizing AI to support everything within the launch. Otherwise, I'm just getting so caught up in doing all the doing that you burn out, right? So plus all the travel, like obviously I then had so much travel this year that I really wanted to make sure that that travel did not impact my students. That was really important to me this year. I knew I wanted to travel more, and I wanted to make sure that I could travel and work because they were very much work trips, but I also wanted to make sure that it didn't impact my customers and my clients through those programs. And so what I made sure was, one, I had my team to support me, but I also made sure that I was available while I was traveling to make sure that they didn't see an interruption of their support. That was really, really important to me. So it was a lot of adjustments and doing things that was new that I hadn't done before. And so I have to give myself props for that. I have to give myself a little bit of leeway there to not judge myself, to recognize that I did the best that I could. I remember at one point when I went across to Hawaii back in May into June, I got sick. So I actually got COVID on the way over and was sick in Hawaii for the majority of the time that I was in bloody Hawaii, which was so terrible, which is why I went back again in November, because I felt like it was like I didn't get to do the things that I really wanted to do. And one of the things that the biggest lessons, I guess, has come out of that is making sure that one, I'm allocating more time for rest, and two, that I have my business more set up to be able to take a break when I am sick. So there were definitely ways that I did that. So I thought that I had planned really well, but now in reflection, I can look back and go, oh, there's definitely some things you could have done differently in order to improve that. And so that's what I'm building out with my OBM at the moment. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conversion events for the year. I also ran some client events as well. So I did 3 client dinners, and then I also did a catch-up event for my clients, which on reflection, I loved that event and I'm going to do it again. And I'm not sure when yet because I haven't mapped that into my calendar yet. But what I loved about that is that was more of a client retention, a reward for my customers that were local, that really could get together and have that in-person connection. And I just didn't plan it well enough in advance in order for enough people to come along. Even though we had a great, beautiful little group, I feel like it could have been so much better if we had planned it a little bit more in advance. And I feel like that's the theme that has come through. I was kind of like on the back foot with my planning of my events that I feel like really impacted the result of those events. So that's definitely a big lesson that I'm taking into 2025. So plan, be more effective in planning. And another lesson's going to come into this in a minute when I talk about it. So then I did 2 in-person mastermind days for my Next Level Mastermind ladies, had guest speakers with that. Honestly, I feel like those days couldn't have been better. I loved those days and I got positive feedback from those days as well. And so what I'm actually doing for 2025 is I'm actually turning them into an overnight. So they're going to be more like an actual retreat included in the mastermind. And so I've wanted to do this for a while. And basically with the current group that I have, I've already told them in March when we have our in-person day, it's going to be an overnight. So we're going to do a full getaway, which I'm so excited about. So I feel like it's been coming for a while now, and it's at that point now where I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen. So next year I'm actually not going to be running a Thrive retreat. The only way to do a retreat with me is within the mastermind of Next Level Mastermind. And that has come off a big decision. So I ran the Thrive retreat this year, loved it, had a beautiful group of ladies, loved it, but it just felt like it wasn't everything that I had hoped for. And so I found an incredible house. We had a beautiful experience, but I feel like it wasn't really what I'd hoped it to be. And so what I've decided is instead of having it open to everyone, it's mainly for my clients because I want to take things that we've been working on to a whole new level. And so that's where I've decided that I'm only going to do that within the Next Level Mastermind in order for you to get that next level of experience. And so it's not going to be open to the public. And so previously, and I want to talk about this from the perspective of funnels, right? So if you think about it, previously it was actually top of funnel. So people were coming in, people often attend retreats because they want the experience of a retreat, but they're not really attending it for the speaker or for the organizer. They're just attending it because it's on their bucket list. And they're kind of like, yeah, it'd be really nice to attend a retreat. And then they obviously see the value of working with me and then they want to work with me, which has happened. Like everyone that's been a part of the most recent retreat will work with me in one-to-one. And so I've recognized that one, it was really hard to sell. So I will just highlight that, be super transparent, really hard to sell. I had to do multiple different mini promotional periods within the year in order to sell it. And I got the numbers that I wanted. So that was great. I think I could have got one more. So I had one more spot left and I didn't sell that in the end. But it was very much a luxury when you really think about the year that we've had financially. So a lot of people had a lot of, the economy really impacted a lot of businesses. And so investing in a luxury item that is a retreat obviously is something that people don't put at the forefront of their minds or one of their first investments. And so for it to be top of funnel, all those challenges come into play with it. So now that I'm looking at it, it's like actually it needs to be part of the service. So when I think about taking away my mastermind members, that makes me so excited. I get absolute joy when I think about taking everything that we're working on to the next level and to have that in-person connection, everything. So really when I think about it, I've just got to change where it sits within my business. And so now it's just going to be part of the existing services within Next Level Mastermind. Okay, so I've talked so much about my travel this year, so I'm not going to dive into that, but I will talk about the lesson that I've learnt with regards to that. And so the lessons that I've touched on so far. So one, better planning with my launches, not adjusting dates when I'm, recognize that I'm not really prepared. Better planning and just better preparation. Like it's one of the biggest things that I need to take into next year. The second thing I want to mention of that is yes, lead gen. So lead gen was a massive one of okay, how do I make sure that I'm doing a lot more lead gen prior to any promotional period, prior to any launch? And one of the things with that is that I haven't not had time to actually work on any other valuable pieces. And one of that was actually recognizing that I haven't created a new lead magnet for Next Level Mastermind at all this year. And I also then, the only lead magnet that I was really creating for next was Unstoppable Sales was actually the challenges. And so in between that, I really didn't have anything else. I did actually, I lie. I launched the Authentic Sales Scripts, which did really, really well. So we did a whole campaign on ads with that, and that did really, really well majority of the time, and it actually supported the uptake for the masterclasses and the challenges as well. So basically it supported the next lead in. So they got value of actually out of the sales scripts, and then they were like, okay, I want to continue to learn from this person. And so then when we emailed them and were like, we're running this masterclass, would you like to join us? We had a lot of uptake from that. And then even we ran ads at the time where we were promoting the Authentic Sales Scripts, and then on the thank you page we were then driving them to the sign up for the challenge, and that worked really, really well twice throughout the year. So that is definitely a funnel that I'll try again next year, but I definitely need new upgraded lead magnets. And the reason why that didn't happen this year is because I did not feel like I had any time to do any actually like research within what people really wanted. And so I've done a lot of that in the last 2 months. And so I've got some epic lead magnets coming out for you in 2025. They're really valuable. So one of them I'm actually working on at the moment, which hopefully by the time this episode goes out, you will have access to it. So check out the show notes and see if it's there. If it's there, you can absolutely access it. So I have a new quiz coming, which is the CEO Confidence Quiz, and it's helping you uncover the self-sabotaging behavior that could be preventing you from taking your business to the next level. It is so good. I spent so long on this, and I had my help, obviously, with my OBM, pulling it all together. So basically you take the quiz, it's super simple, it's 7 questions, and then you get emailed a PDF of that specific behavior, and it goes through everything from the impacts that it has on your current business, why it's preventing you from scaling, the action steps that you can take to overcome that behavior, the root cause of that behavior, and then also a mindset affirmation to start embedding into your everyday to help support you overcome that block, so then you can start scaling your business. It's honestly so good. So you've got to check it out. If the link is in the show notes, go take the quiz right now. All right, the next things I want to talk about are my investments. And so obviously I know I've talked about my events that I attended in the States a lot this year. So that was one of my biggest investments. That I think was like 12,000. And then on top of that, my travel and accommodation on top of that. So I spent about 25,000 to be honest, within just that with the dinner series, but it has been so freaking worthwhile. And I'm so glad that I went, and I'm going to do a whole other episode on this because it's in alignment with my book that I have coming out next year. And it has been such a phenomenal identity upgrade. So one, the investment, the way that I've showed up at those events, the way that I've connected and built relationships and built my network has been phenomenal throughout the entire year. And this is where my biggest lesson has come from with regards to network. I've always heard that term, your network is your net worth. And it's not until this year that really hardcore resonates with me now, to the point where I'm like, I have to prioritize, and I want to, and I am going to prioritize building my network of high value people. So what I mean by that is when you pour into people around you, that high value people, so people you really want to be connected with, people that will help you raise your credibility and authority, people that you can learn from, people that you can connect with, people that are also on the same path as you, that you can touch base with and bounce ideas off and get support and advice from. Like, there are so many people when you think about those key elements. And I made a list. I literally made a list. I remember that after the first event that I went to in America, I wrote a list of people that I wanted to be connected with. And I can tell you now that I'm now all connected with all of them, which is amazing. And I've done it through pouring into them, asking how I can help them, supporting them, sharing their stuff, like really thinking about how I can be connected with them from a place of just wanting to give. And it was definitely a mindset shift that I had to have coming out of scarcity, right? When we're in a state of scarcity, it can be like, oh my God, I've got to give all this stuff for free and I'm not going to get anything from it. Or if you think about giving, you think sometimes from a place of scarcity, you're like, well, what am I going to get from this? Is this really worth my time? But we're thinking too short term. And this is what really shifted for me. I was like listening to Dean Graziosi talk about it, and then Brendon Burchard talk about it. And he was like, I pour into, and I think about those people at that scale, they don't need to. They do not need to. They're already so well known that if they asked anyone to support them or anyone to help them or collaborate with them, everyone would be jumping at the chance to do that. But yet they still pour into their people. And what I mean by that is that they're giving. They're literally going, how can I help you? What do you need right now? Who can I connect you with? What are you working on? And that blew my mind. And I was like, why am I not doing that myself? And so through all the connections that I made this year, I really poured into my network, and I know that I can even do it more. So I feel like there's been, even the last couple of months, I've been so busy that I haven't prioritized it, because I know that we can get busy, but it's still not a priority, right? I've got to build that habit. And so there's definitely been a few people that I've done that with, and it's been so beneficial. And all of, like, honestly, it has blown my mind, and they have to be the right people that have the similar mindset as well. But it has blown my mind of how people want to help you when you help them. Like, honestly, I can't even tell you the support that I'm getting for my book, the connections that I've made for my book, to find an editor, to find a formatter, and getting a full launch plan, book launch party plan, like getting to number one, like all of the things to support my book I've gotten for free, which blows my freaking mind. Right through to connections to other people that have allowed me to get people on my podcast that, again, are blowing my mind. The way that I have had great opportunities come my way, from being able to present in other people's groups, be able to present for high-level people like Lori Harder, to be able to be invited to speak at her Empire Builder conference in Noosa with Tina Tower, which is happening next year. Like, honestly, there's been so many experiences and moments that have come through that I'm like, holy hell, of course, this makes so much sense, that your network is your net worth, which is my biggest lesson from this year that I'm taking into 2025 as one of my highest priorities. How can I pour into the people that I want to be connected with, just because I want to be connected with them, not because I want to take, or not because I want to get, just because I know by being surrounded by them, my net worth, my everything increases. So I want you to think about how that shows up for you as well. So I didn't have time to do all this stuff because I had a team member leave. She is working on a startup, a tech startup, which is so amazing. And so Lisa finished up with me in August, and I haven't rehired since. And that has definitely impacted my ability to, one, prioritize really serving my network, and also creating more content that's really valuable for people to really see the value in working with me, such as lead magnets, such as other types of things where I'm just serving my audience. And so, like doing lives or creating actually really thought out content. Like, I feel like my content has been on the fly this year, which there have been moments where I've been really planned and it's worked really well. Like, I've had such an increase of my audience, which has been so good, and my engagement has gone up when I have taken the time to plan out my content with an effective strategy. That's where it's made the biggest difference. And so I have not had much time to do that this year, which is when next year I've got to start looking at hiring. Okay. The other investments that I made, I worked with another coach. I worked with Ali Swift for a 6-week intensive, and we redid my marketing strategy. We redid, that's where the Unstoppable Sales program came from, and we worked on my personal brand. Then I did a stylist session, which was so amazing. I had a stylist session to really plan out my event outfits for America, which helped me step into a whole new level of identity, right? So these events have shifted everything within what I believe is possible for myself and how I see myself. And that came down to also the clothes as well. I'd done a few photo shoots as well. So invested in photo shoots, and one in LA and one with Danielle, my stylist. And also, I'm sure there was one more. Oh yes, and one with Stepha Doyle earlier in the year as well. I've also invested in a lot of events. So obviously coming back from America in the first event where it was so amazing, and we heard so many speakers speak about the fact of, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people and you're investing in time in attending events. Last year was super busy for me, so I didn't actually spend time going to a lot of events, whereas this year I prioritized it. So I did the Kajabi conference, the Ignite conference, presented actually at Jess Rufus's retreat, attended the Golden Brands conference, owned the stage with Erica Kramer in Melbourne. And then I also did a bunch of guest presentations for Golden Brands, Impero, Jamie Abbott, her Empire Builder, Jess's retreat, Lori Harder's affiliate group. Like, there were so many amazing presentations, whereas I feel like that's also where I've got room to grow. And I went through my calendar, and I'm sure there's been more this year, but I can't remember them all. But that's where I'm going to prioritize a little bit more of that and more speaking next year. So I've already booked in 3 speaking gigs next year. And so I'm going to work on booking more of those next year as well, because I feel like that's where, especially with my book launch as well, like I really want to make sure that I'm getting my book out to more and more people. So taking the time to really invest in that. And Obviously, also, I moved house, did a lot of travel this year, got my rental property ready for rent. It's almost ready to go, and have just spent so much more time, I guess, having more one-on-one conversations. As my last biggest lesson for this year was whenever I took the time to prioritize connection and prioritize one-on-one conversations, it always equaled more sales. And so with every launch, when I prioritize those conversations, that's where I had more sales. And so this is what I'll also take into next year is like not getting caught up in the ego of online business where you're like launching and you're putting it out there and you're saying how good you are and you're promoting your offers and you're doing all these things, but you're not taking the time to really get into the nitty-gritty of your customer and having those one-on-one conversations and not running from objections. Not that I run from objections, but I'm just seeing this a lot with other people as well, is that a lot of times people have this attitude or ego that it's like, oh, they can just go to the sales page for that information, or I don't want to have any discovery calls. I don't want to do sales calls. Like people have this real attitude. And I'm like, in this market, in this time in the world, in this economy, people need to feel certain in their investment. And if they want to work with you as a coach, and this is so important to me, I literally emailed someone who's joined the waitlist for Next Level Mastermind for next year this week. And I said to her, look, I would love to have a conversation with you because it's so important to me that I get to know the people that I want to work with, and it's not just through a sales page. And so that will be really, really prevalent for me next year. So if you want to join any of my programs, expect that we're going to have some type of one-on-one conversation, whether it be in the DMs to make sure that you're the right fit for the program, whether I'm the right fit for you, for your coach and what you need. And also with Next Level Mastermind, you cannot join the mastermind without actually having a conversation with me. So there's going to be that change as well. So it's going to be less about sales pages, more about one-on-one conversations. But one of the biggest things, and I remember hearing Denise Duffield-Thomas talk about this as well at the Kajabi conference, around how she's really prioritized that one-on-one connection, and that's made a huge impact in her business. And I remember her talking about in one of her launches that she sent every person that joined her online masterclass a personalized video. I was like, holy hell, again, she doesn't need to do that, but she decided she wanted to do that because she wanted to have that one-to-one connection and show people that it would be worthwhile investing in her. And so if you can take anything away from this episode is recognizing like if that any of that ego comes in for you, and notice like that could be actually blocking you from having the conversations that will lead to sales. And if the sales conversations that feel awkward and uncomfortable, then again, you may need to work on sales in 2025. All right, I don't want to lose my voice, so I'm going to wrap this episode up. So the biggest lessons, biggest reflections, my main overall takeaway is that it's all happening for you. Everything that's happened this year has been honestly this evolution of all the work that I've done leading up to this. Work on my mindset, work on my belief in myself, work on my programs, work on my relationships, work on everything within my life, within my business, has led me to where I am today. And again, I still have so far to go. So don't, I'm not talking from a place of like, oh, I've arrived. No, business always evolves. But what I'm trying to say is that when I look back on 2024, I'm like, even the challenges, even the fucking hardest moments where I was like, oh my God, this isn't going to work. Oh my God, this launch is bombing. Oh my God, why did I do this change? Oh my God, like this is going to take so much work to pull together. Oh my God, why are people saying this about me? Like all of this stuff, all of these, the lows that happened prepared me and set me up to work through that stuff because I have not shied away from it. So whenever I had challenges, whenever I had moments that were low, that I was like, okay, why am I attracting this? I asked myself, like, why am I attracting this? What is the wound that I need to heal here? Or what's the mindset shift that I need to have here in order for me to show up as the best version of myself? The other thing that really showed this for me is that every obstacle that I came up against, and again, we're always learning, we're always growing. Every obstacle that I came up against, that was the mindset that I approached it with, is like, okay, what's the lesson here that I need to learn? And there's been times where I was like, oh my gosh, everything my clients are talking about is reflected back at me. Why is this happening? Or I would look at moments where I would stop and go, hang on a minute, this isn't what I asked for. This is not what I want, but why is this happening? And so not doing it from a disempowered place, from doing it from a place of like, for me to level up, for me to believe in myself, for me to improve this part of the program or for improve whatever it is that I'm working on, I needed to be open to that lesson. And so if you can recognize that the lessons are showing up for you in order to prepare you for where you want to go, it's a much more empowered place to attract the changes. And I was saying this to my mastermind clients the other day, like sometimes we have a year where the universe has basically prepared you for your up level, but the up level isn't here yet. But you had to go through these challenges in order for you to develop the mindset, develop the skill, develop the program, the system, the process, like whatever it was. You needed to go through that. Otherwise, the lesson wouldn't have happened. And so I feel like that's what's happened for me this year. There's been moments where I was like, oh, I don't feel ready, or I don't feel good enough. And I would still pitch, or I would still move through that fear and take that action anyway. And my book has definitely been a huge catalyst for that, and where I've lived and breathed exactly what I teach in my new book that's coming out in hopefully March 2025. It's been these moments where I was like, okay, you've got to walk the talk. And so I've been such an advocate for being the example. And that's been a really important thing for me with the way that I show up and what I do. And every single obstacle has been fucking hard, but I haven't shied away from it. And I think that's been my biggest reflection from this year, to not shy away from the lesson, to not shy away from the obstacle, go for it head on, face it. And when you move through it, you'll be so proud of yourself for overcoming it and moving through it that it changes you. It absolutely changes you. When I look back to when I first attended that event in Arizona in February, compared to the way that I showed up at the last event in November, I was a different person, and now the results are coming through. To be asked to present for Lori Harder, to have built a relationship and connection with her that now she wants to work on other things with me, like that blows my freaking mind. To have had Chris Harder on my podcast, he has been absolutely phenomenal for me this year. To have Lindsay Schwartz on my podcast, like that has been a dream, like an absolute dream. I'm literally interviewing Lori for my podcast in January. Like that would be a moment of like, holy shit, I have followed her journey this whole time. Like I've listened to every single episode of her podcast. I've been part of her masterminds, I've been connected with her for a long time. But to actually have her on my podcast, it feels like a culmination. It feels like a holy shit, I've made it kind of energy. And that's really awesome. But the way that I've invested in myself in order to make that happen is everything from the mindset, from the money, from the actions, from the moving through the fear every step of the way. So trust that it's all working out for you when you face it, right? So sometimes we can use that terminology, oh, it's all happening for you when the shit is hitting the fan, but it really is. But if you're not willing to face it, if you're not willing to approach it from that perspective of like, what's the lesson here? How do I want to show up? How do I want to be through this challenge? Then you're not really embracing it. You're rejecting it, or you're trying to avoid it. Whereas I feel like that's one of the biggest lessons you can do for yourself is like embrace the lesson. What do I need to learn in order to grow? If you're not getting the results that you want to get, it's most likely because you haven't embraced the lessons, so you're most likely avoiding them. Whew. Okay, so I didn't expect this episode to be so big, but I really wanted to dive into that for you today. So I hope that you've taken away a lot from today's episode. I'd love to hear your takeaway, so feel free to share it on your stories, tag me in it, or just send me a DM and let me know what you took away. And if you want me to dive into anything in particular deeper, please let me know. All right, lovely. Enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your Happy New Year. And I hope that you are so proud of yourself for everything you've achieved this year, because you should be. You should be so proud. If you have a business that's succeeding, if you have a business that is just surviving, all of it needs to be celebrated. So wishing you all the best for your new year. And I cannot wait to support you again in 2025. Thank you for listening, and if you've found any value out of this episode, make sure you hit the follow button so you get access to the episodes as soon as they are live, and make sure you come hang out with me on Instagram. You can find me at Christine Corcoran _coach. Have an incredible week.